Please tell us your name.
Maria Barnes.
And can you tell us a little bit about Maria Barnes? Anything you feel comfortable sharing that will help us get to know you a little bit better?
I am from Eastern North Carolina, and I currently live in Arizona. Um, I am a teacher. I've taught third and fourth grades and currently teach sixth grade. An avid reader, um, a creator. I love creating things, um, crafting, and cooking and baking. Those are my passions.
Well, the baking part sounds really good to me. So, let's keep that in the background there. So, how did you end up in Arizona? Why Arizona? What was the uniqueness about Arizona over other places?
Well, it wasn't really my choice. My husband accepted a position here.
Oh, okay. And what is it like there in Arizona? Can you give us a sense in terms of race, ethnicity, diversity? Whatever you can share to help us get a sense of what it's like living in Arizona.
Well, it actually is more diverse than you would think. There are a number of Black and Brown people here. However, it's apparent that the majority um, are white people. So, like at my current job, uh, I'm the only Black teacher on campus. There's only two Black people there. Um,
Wow.
and even with the students I taught last year, there weren't very many Black students. The more, I guess, diverse population falls in the brown population with the Hispanic children, or Hispanic families. But in my current neighborhood, it's majority white, but there are some Black families. But everyone is kind. They're very friendly, which is completely different from the South in certain regards. um, but you still feel that disconnect of not having or knowing that you have your people close by or to go to. So that's the difference there. The landscape is completely different. Everything here is brown.
No
And it's very
trees,
hot.
no trees and grass, huh?
We have grass in our yard, and that's something that we never had to do worry about watering the grass.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to water the grass here. Like this week, the temperature, the high is 115. Last week we had a spot of rain overnight. It was like a 10% chance, and 10% for Arizona is it's gonna rain, but it might last 5 minutes. Um, that 10% overnight rain gave us about 25% humidity the next morning. And with the temperatures being between 80 and 90 at 7:30, 8 a.m., I went out to take out the trash and I literally felt like I couldn't breathe.
Wow.
It's a complete different, humidity in North Carolina is 100%, like it seems like all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But the temperatures are never so high,
Right.
that you don't have that separation.
Mm-hmm.
So with it being so hot so early and that little 25% of humidity, it literally felt like I couldn't breathe.
Wow.
So yeah, very different, very different.
Very different. So let's go back to the point where you made earlier that you are the only Black teacher in your space. Mm-hmm. And can you describe your students? Is your students diverse, or do you have a population of students across many ethnicities, or you just have one or two particular types of students?
When I started, I don't know, I didn't have any expectations. Let me just start by saying this will not be my first teaching role being the only Black teacher. Mm-hmm. I experienced that in North Carolina as well. In terms of my students, I think my class, I had 24 kids. And of the 24, I think I had two who were no, excuse me, 3 who were Black or African descent, and 1 or 2 who were mixed.
Mhm.
And I had about 4 or 5, maybe 3 or 4 who were Hispanic, and the remainder of my class was white.
And
And
what
that
is
was
that?
just my homeroom.
Yeah.
So we were departmentalized. So I taught math and social studies, and my teammate had ELA and science.
Mhm.
Well, ELA, and then I had another third class that went to science. But even amongst those classes, it was less diverse. So I had the most diverse class within the grade level, and there were 4 teachers. Um,
How does that feel? What does it feel like to be in that kind of space? So if you don't have a, other black colleagues to go talk to when you encounter challenges, what is that for you to be in the classroom and to be in a place where you are alone, if you will?
being that I was new, I started in October, so it was also a very untraditional. I left North Carolina on October 8th, and I started teaching on October 14th.
Wow.
Um, it was, it felt lonely. It felt, there were times where I felt very just alone
Mhm.
in just simple things in terms of, I can't go to, you know, my friend TJ down the hall and say, what do you think about this? Granted, I had my teammates or my colleagues that I, began to feel somewhat of a connection to, but it just still wasn't that same dynamic, to say, hey, let's go to the gym together, because they weren't doing that. They had other interests that weren't necessarily my interests.
Right.
So, and it wasn't, I've never been one to start a job to say, I'm taking this position to make friends. It was always, if I make friends while I'm there, it happens, but that's not my purpose. Um, I found that I had with the students, it wasn't too difficult. They were very welcoming for the most part. Um, I didn't get any pushback whatsoever from the students. Of course, I was new, so they thought I was brand new, so they tried it, but I shut that down real quick. Like, nah, I'm new here, but I'm not new.
Right.
But I ended up having some great relationships with the kids. I didn't have any blatant issues with parents. Not that I could feel that came from a racial standpoint.
Mhm.
There was one incident where we were having our conferences, which they do conferences totally different here. So there was this particular conference night. The student was standing with his mom, and she's like, "Who's your teacher?" Because backing up a little bit, the week that I started, October 14th, was their week of conferences. So that week, I didn't know anybody. I didn't know the kids by name. They didn't know me. They knew me because clearly I was the only black teacher, but they didn't know me well enough to say anything to me. So I sat in on conferences with some of the parents and listened to learn, but nothing that I could 100% say I retained
Mhm.
to hold on to. But this particular parent was not at that week of conferences. So we had not had any exchanges whatsoever. And so she asked him from across the room, which one's your teacher? And he was like, the lady standing right there. And she's like, which one? He's like, the one with the glasses. So it was funny because he didn't say the black teacher,
Right.
but she essentially was trying to get him to say,
Right.
is it the black teacher?
Yeah.
So she seemed slightly taken aback whenever she put 2 and 2 together, I'll say, to give her the benefit of the doubt. But she was never rude. She was never, she didn't mistreat me in any way. But I think it was still that first, oh, okay, so this is happening.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, it's happening. And that was kind of the end of it. Staff wise, I mean, they were kind, as welcoming, I guess, as they could be in some situations. The main question that I get is, "Oh, what brought you to Arizona?"
Yeah.
And I say my husband's job, and it automatically goes to, "Oh, well, what does he do?"
Mm-hmm.
And I say, "Well, he's an engineer." Oh,
Mm-hmm.
oh, okay. So it's almost that they're surprised.
So
So
let me ask you this question. Something has been bothering me, and my husband is a school teacher. What is
yes,
good about education and what is bad about elementary education?
I'm gonna start with the good just because I feel that's the best way to start my day on a positive note. Um, the relationships that I build with my students has been the 100% greatest thing that I could ever say I have gotten from being an educator.
Mm-hmm.
Even down to some of the relationships that I have with my past students and their families,
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't change anything.
Mm-hmm.
There have been difficult parents, as within any job, you're going to face difficulties. But I wouldn't change those simply because I knew that I needed to experience those things to prepare me for even greater things. But just the idea of being able to spend time with these children and help to educate them in a way so they have a different outlook on the world.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not always about the book
Right.
or the test.
Yeah.
Um, that was something I had a conversation with my mom about when I first started. I was hired to work at a Title I school in Greensboro, and I had my classroom set up, and I was in a week of orientation for new teachers, and got a phone call on the first day of the training that said, "I'm so sorry to tell you this, but you have to move schools because our enrollment dropped." And I was devastated. I didn't know what that meant. They couldn't tell me where I was going to be moved to.
Mm-hmm.
And I found out on Friday, the school, I had a list of schools provided. And I said, "Well, how much time do I have to learn about the places?" And they said, "Oh, we need to know within the hour."
Hmm.
And I chose a school solely based on, I know where that school is. I drove past it every day going to work.
Yeah.
And it just so happened was a school that was across from the golf course.
Yeah.
So it was a neighborhood school. And I remember calling my mom and I cried after I went to the school and met the principal. And I told her, I was like, "These children don't need me. They don't need me. They have everything.
Right.
They don't need me."
Right.
And my mom, who's a minister, she said, "You don't know that. You don't know what they need.
Right.
God sent you there for a reason."
Yep.
And boy, was she right.
Right.
So that's the biggest positive. Um, Now the negatives, I mean, everybody talks about teacher pay,
Yeah.
but I never went into it for the money.
Yeah.
Um, just politics in the sense of, we have to do this way today, but this is changed tomorrow because it doesn't work for this family. If you have a parent who's going to be there and they're going to advocate for their kids and what their kids want and need, they're going to get it.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have other children who need the same things, if their parent cannot advocate for them, they're not going to get it,
Mm-hmm.
and that's very disheartening. Um, I think too many times the people who are doling down these laws and these rules and expectations, um, they've never sat or worked in my position, so they have no idea what I do. They assume to know, but they don't really know. They wouldn't last a day
Right.
with trying to follow a specific schedule. I have to teach this for 30 minutes and I have to get these kids to lunch and pick them up. And then we got specials and then I've got to teach this, this, and this. And this child has a sore throat and this kid's throwing up and I got to answer this phone call and I got 15 emails and I've got training after school. And nobody thinks about any of that. It's just always, oh, but you get the summers off. But we don't.
Yeah, right.
Because most people leave their job at 5 o'clock and they go home. I leave my job at 5 o'clock when I got there at 6 a.m. to be prepared for the day.
Right.
I leave at 5 and then I go home and I'm on my computer doing more work.
Right.
I'm grading papers. So my day actually kind of goes from like 6 a.m. till about 9 p.m.
Right. And you're not paid for any of that.
Nope. I only get compensation for the work day.
And you don't get to go to lunch by yourself.
You know what? I will say I have been fortunate that I've had duty-free lunch at this school. I take them, drop them off, and I have my lunch time. But I will say when I was in North Carolina, that was a hit or miss. It depended on the day.
Yeah. Did you get time to go to the bathroom, or did you have when you went? Did you have to take all your students and all of you stood in lines each one?
I told my kids that because I'm outside in a mobile unit or a cabin or whatever they call it. I told my next door neighbor, because we have a door, it's two together, and we have a door that separates us. And I would open his door and go, I gotta go, and I would just go. But he, the bathroom isn't close, so that's a whole nother issue. But usually bathroom is you go to the bathroom when you have a break. So if I take my kids to lunch, I go to the bathroom after I get them to the line. And in the morning, I go before school. And when I take them to specials, I go before I have to pick them up or they come back to class. And that's essentially my bathroom breaks for the day. It's on whatever time I have. And there are some days where I don't have a special. So it's literally just lunch, before school, and after school, unless I go knock on the door and go.
The thing that I find most amazing, when you think about a college professor, he or she's paid hundreds of thousands of dollars, unless they're an adjunct, of course, but they're paid really well.
Mm-hmm.
But the students that get to them couldn't have gotten there if there had not been a you or an elementary school or middle school or high school teacher to get them there, and they're paid the least amount of money it is. Mm-hmm. And then the laws which govern teachers, which allows them not to allow you to have a lunch break or to have a 15-minute break or even to leave the campus or to do all that work when you get there in the morning and all that work at night, and you don't get compensated for it at all. Mm-hmm. And then you fight for tenure, you fight to keep your job, or if you've been there a certain number of years, you may or may not be paid a certain amount because you reached the max that they're going to pay a teacher.
Yeah.
And I, as you know, my husband's a teacher. Sometimes I'm just so flabbergasted by what he does, because he sounds just like you. Like when he goes to the bathroom, he can only go when his class can go, right? So they all take turns going to the bathroom, and so, I mean, the laws that govern education seem so foreign to what's realistic that it's crazy. But
teachers are treated like second-class citizens.
Absolutely. But what I want to ask you about education, really what I was getting at, maybe I didn't phrase my question right, so, and I can speak for North Carolina. I won't speak because I don't know anything about Arizona. Black and brown children are expelled, sent to the office, chastised, whatever it is, to the point that they become disengaged with education. And when there's not a black or brown teacher there who understands their plight, who understands why they're behaving this way, and you have a teacher who's not that, who then says, well, you've got to go to the office, or, they call somebody to come get them or something, because their behavior is not what they are used to in their homes or in their families. So not only are they challenged education just because we've been so far behind in education, but now I've missed, a day or two of class. How do I catch up from that, and why is it that our behaviors end up in expulsions, suspensions, in class suspension, in school suspension, whatever it is. Why is it that so easy for Black and brown children to be on the wrong end of the education spectrum?
Well, it goes back to me saying if you don't have parents that are able to advocate for your needs, then they're not going to get it. And that's not taking anything away from any Black parents or brown parents, because I know I grew up in a single parent home. My mom had to work.
Right.
My mom worked third shift. She worked nights. So I saw her when I got home from school, and she made sure I did my homework and she cooked dinner, and then she went back to bed. And my grandma was there. But the parents have to work.
Right.
They don't have the luxury of having a parent who stays at home.
Right.
Who can be that voice, who can show up, at the first incident.
Right.
And what I've observed in my 10 years of teaching, the compassion is not there and the grace is not there. It falls back in line with the assumption of you people. It's
Right.
the expectation of this is how they act.
Right.
I don't expect any better.
Yeah.
So this child could come to school and couldn't have gotten any sleep last night because of the
What's
new
going on at home? Right. Right.
or maybe the kid had to get up at 4 a.m. and get dressed because mom has to be at work at 7. So mom takes Junior to grandma's house, which is 45 minutes away. So they have to get up early to make sure he gets what he needs. So he's still tired because his sleep was broken.
Right. Or that he didn't get enough to eat that night. Or there's some other kind of trauma in their home, right? So maybe
what's going on at home.
Right.
There could be, it could even be something as simple as their 4 walls could be fine, but who's to say what did I hear that was going on next door last night?
Right.
That kept me awake all night.
Right. Exactly.
I mean, there's so many little things that no grace is offered.
Right.
And it's unfortunate because as the teacher of color, you want to save them and say, listen, this has got to stop. And you try to have that conversation with them. But these children are so disengaged with the education system as a whole. You have to build their trust to even have that conversation with them, even looking like them.
Absolutely.
Because they automatically equate teacher to white and bad.
Right.
They don't think, oh, she looks like me or he looks like me, so he can help me.
Right.
Nope, it's not seen that way.
Right.
And it's unfortunate. But that is the unfortunate thing, that it's a simple stereotype.
Do you think with the death of Mr. Floyd, we will see change in education people will become more cognizant of what's needed for Black and brown children in public schools?
The teacher in me wants to say yes, but I feel like it's a Band-Aid right now. I feel like it's going to be temporary. For the next 2 to 3 years, maybe it's going to be, they're going to push to have task forces and committees that are based around diversity and inclusion. And that will last for this small chunk of time. And as soon as everything dies down, then it's going to get brushed off and changed, just like a curriculum.
Yep. And
it's just like it's a project. It's a project. I want to be wrong. I want to definitely be wrong and say, oh no, it changed, and it has changed going forward. But
so we have about 5 minutes. I just want to ask you one last question, and the rest of the time is yours. So in the way that education is currently structured, and people in leadership roles in Washington, D.C. have been pushing for people to go back to school, public schools to go back to school, threatening them to withholding funding and all that stuff. Do you have any concern about, and I don't know where Arizona stands in the COVID epidemic, but do you have any concerns about your health and the health of your students going back into the classroom?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Arizona is currently one of the top 3 states. Every day, the numbers keep increasing. And it's because our current governor, who started out on a good roll, he was on track, but then he wanted to appease others and he opened up too quickly. And the reopening caused people to think, oh, okay. And they have tried to live life as they had been before.
Right.
And they want to protest wearing masks and they feel like it's their God given right to choose. Again, no empathy for others. I myself am definitely terrified. We were sent a survey that asked us what our 3 choices were to level them 1, 2, or 3. To go back full-time face-to-face, do the modified 3 days face-to-face, 2 days from home, or the third option was complete online. I, no brainer, chose complete online because my fear is I know that I have other health conditions that I deal with.
Yep.
And my greatest fear is, I mean, it's just something simple, and I'm sure that your husband has seen it too. It's something that all teachers have experienced. Junior gets off the bus and he comes to class and he says, Miss, I don't feel good.
Right.
And I say, well, what's wrong? My throat hurts. My head hurts. Well, honey, it's just 8:15. Did you tell your mom? Yeah, she just gave me some medicine and told me to go to school. It would be okay.
Yep.
And then you send Junior to the nurse and we find out Junior has a fever. But mom gave Junior Tylenol to mask the fever because she had to go to work.
Right.
So I understand both sides of that. But at the same time, I feel like that's a bit selfish that you're endangering others just for your household. And that is my fear, is that is what will happen. You know, it said the parents will be responsible for providing a clean mask for the kids every day, and they will be responsible for checking their temperature and making sure they have no symptoms.
Right.
They're already complaining that they feel like they're homeschooling, right, which they are not. They're not homeschooling. We're still providing instruction. We're providing all the work. We're doing all the work.
Right.
So that's not homeschool. But that is the argument. Everybody wants to go back to school.
Right. Because the parents want to go back to their normalcy. So send their kids off to somebody else. Yep. And they can go back to their lives. That's very unfortunate. I'm very sorry to hear that. I hope they do allow you to take the third option so that you don't have to go out. I've been praying for the same thing for my husband, because in addition to, you know, what could happen to him, we have a child with a severely compromised immune system. I have a stack of health issues of my own. And so he goes into his class, you know, which he loves. He loves face-to-face instruction. You know, he feels like he gets the most done that way. And he comes home and kills both his wife and his son.
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure.
And no one's going to look at that and say that's our fault. It's going to be, he took the risk. He went into the classroom. But are you really giving him an option? Are you really giving him an option? Because if your governor or our governor says we are going back to face-to-face instruction, either you need to find another job or you're going to be vulnerable to whatever it is. And I'm sure this is happening to you. You know, over your years of teaching, when little Johnny or Sally come to school with a cold, sooner or later you catch that cold too, or flu or whatever it is. So how do they expect a virus that is killing people by the hundreds to be managed in a way that their teachers are going to be safe? You know, you know, that their teachers are going to be able to take care of their own family, because you have a husband, you have a child, you know, so you don't want to bring this home to them, you know. And so I don't know. I feel about this, and I was really excited to talk to you because I really wanted to hear another version, because hearing my husband's version is terrifying to me. It is absolutely frightening. Just the entire thing of being a teacher is scary to me, but then to add all these other components, because as you said, you know, my husband leaves home, I think I don't know what time school starts at his school, but he leaves here 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, and he's running copying and making all these things ready for the classroom. And then he comes home, he's got to do lesson plans, and he's got to do group planning for his grade level. And I'm sitting here thinking, hell, I have a full-time job that I'm on call 24 hours a day, and he works more than I do, and he makes way less than I do.
Oh yeah.
There's something wrong with that. So
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Thankfully, the governor pretty much said that schools would, the face-to-face learning was delayed. So, but it said schools would not reopen. But each district has pretty much announced that they're going to start online learning on our first day of school. And my first day of school will be August 4th.
wow.
So we're waiting. So on July 14th, which is next Tuesday, we're supposed to, I guess, be hearing what that's going to look like for us. I've heard apparently there's I think some sort of curriculum may have been purchased for something for us to use. So I'm not sure how true that is. I don't know any details about that. I'm curious how that's going to look. How are you going to provide training on it? So I don't know. But I'm grateful that at least my district has said, as of right now, we're going to do on the complete online. And once we feel everything is safe, we will then transition back into it as needed. So.
Well, I want to thank you very much for chatting with me. This has been very enlightening, and I know something about Arizona. At least I won't be going there. But thank you so much for chatting. And once this video converts, I'll send you a link to it so you can look at it. And if you approve it, we'll upload it. Okay?
Okay, sounds good. Thank you for having me. I enjoyed this conversation today.
Absolutely. It was very, very good for me too as well. And I wish you all the best. And we'll keep you and your Arizonians in our prayers.
Please do. We need it.
Absolutely. So stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.